Nderuar kolegë student, nderuar profesor, prodekan, Sinoni, shef Nureddin, profesor Malja. Kemi nderin sot në ditën e dytë të ditëve të historisë, ta mirëpresim profesoreshën nga Universiteti Zagrebit, Mirela Altic, me një kontribut shumë të veçantë për rrugëtimin ose historinë e Kosovës në harta. Unë pra so pa takor mësi me shpëti librin, po që është një prej librave më me interes për neve, aq me tetë që është botus, një prej shpive botuse ma prestigjioze në botë brell. Po besoj që kam me pas rast me dëgju për profesoreshës sot rreth përmbajtjes së librit, e po ashtu në rast se dikush për juve ka interes për ndonjë çështje, e dim që kemi shumë probleme, paqartësi, kufizime në harta, etj. Dhe profesoresha na sjell një perspektivë tjetër. Profesor Meha ka dhënë një kontribut shumë shmushur me librin e tij që e ka botu frek, me recenzent profesorin ton Ibrahim Gashi, megjithatë sot kemi një profesoreshë që do të sjell një kontribut të veçantë. E në hyrje të saj, profesor Malja do ta lexojë një biografi të shkurtër për profesoreshën, pastaj profesoresha vazhdon me ligjëratën e saj. Profesor,
faleminderit.
Profesor Mehmet Prishtina na ka nderuar po ashtu me prezencën e tij. Nëse do të kemi rast me pa dhe promovimin e librit të tij dhe ju ftoj tani po ashtu prezant. Faleminderit.
Faleminderit. Dr. Mirela Altic është profesoreshë rregullt në Departamentin e Historisë në Universitetin e Zagrebit dhe bashkëpunëtore kryesore shkencore në Institutin e Shkencave Shoqërore në Zagreb. Fusha e saj studimore fokusohet kryesisht në harta dhe hartografi si burim historik. Profesoresha Altic është themeluese e kurseve të para në historinë e hartografisë në Universitetin e Zagrebit dhe kontriboi në edukimin hartografik të gjeneratave të studentëve të historisë. Ajo është veçanërisht e përkushtuar ndaj zhvillimit të metodologjive dhe çësjeve të reja për hartat në shkencën e historisë moderne, si pedagoge dhe mësimdhënëse, me përvojë kohë pas kohë ligjëron edhe në universitetet të huaja jashtë Kroacisë. Në kuadër të punës së saj kërkimore, profesoresha Altic është specializuar në historinë shoqërore të hartave, shkëmbimin ndërkulturor të dijes dhe studimin e periudhës së modernitetit të hershëm të historisë. Dr. Altic është autore më shumë se 20 librave, punimeve origjinale shkencore dhe bashkëpunëtore në projektin The History of Cartography, University of Wisconsin-Madison, University of Chicago Press. Dr. Altic ka qenë ligjëruese e ftuar në Universitetin Stanford, Bibliotekën Newburgh në Chicago, Shoqatën Amerikane Gjeografike, Institutin Ritzi të Universitetit të San Franciscos, Akademinë Gjermane të Shkencave, Universitetin e Antwerpit, si dhe studiuese vizitore në Institutin Universitar Evropian në Firenze. Ekspertiza e profesoreshës përqendrohet në historinë e hartografisë së Ballkanit dhe Amerikës, një kombinim i pazakontë që jep asaj një këndvështrim të veçantë mbi historinë krahasuese të hartografisë. Libri i saj Encounters in New World, Jesus Cartography for the Americans, i botuar në Universitet of Chicago Press në korrik të vitit 2022, u vlerësua me çmim nga Shoqata Amerikane e Gjeografëve. Profesoresha Altic zhvilloi dhe ka një interes të madh për historinë e Kosovës, e sidomos asaj në fillim të viteve 2000. Libri i saj i parë për Kosovën, Historical Geography of Kosova, u botua në vitin 2006, ndërsa më pas u botua edhe në edicionin në gjuhën shqipe si Gjeografia Historike e Kosovës, botuar në Zagreb nga Unioni i Bashkësisë Shqiptare të Republikës së Kroacisë në vitin 2007. Libri i saj më i fundit, Kosovo History Maps, Leiden Brill 2025, është rezultat i udhëtimeve të reja të zhvilluara në një numër arkivash dhe bibliotekash të huaja. Sot në këtë ligjëratë të hapur, profesoresha do të prezantojë në formë të një vertikale historike specifikat e paraqitjes hartografike të territorit të sotshëm të Kosovës, si dhe vlerave dhe rëndësisë së hartave në interpretimin real të historisë.
Mirëmëngjes. Did I tell it right? Yes. Thank you very much. I have to excuse myself for talking English because this is my working language, but I'm sure that you will follow me quite well. If you have any problem to understand my English or if I talk too fast, please warn me so I will slow it down because sometimes I start to talk too fast for people to follow me. So it's a great pleasure to be here, and I have to express my deepest gratitude to University of Pristina, particularly to Department of History for inviting me, and for me it's really a great privilege to speak in front of you, my colleagues and my students. So I hope you will enjoy my story of Kosovo told through the old maps. As you already heard, I'm a specialist in map history, so I study history of the space, which is also part of historiographic sciences, but with a bit different discourse. We are interested in everything that happened in space, and of course history happened in space, but we are also interested in all social aspects of history that happen in space. And maps tell the story in a great deal. You will see why. So why I will open this discussion with a topic that sometimes some big countries forget. Why history of so-called small-sized countries matters? Why are we important? Because of geopolitics changes that happened in Europe in the late 90s, rewrote political map of Central and Eastern Europe. However, this is not something that happened to us. That event completely redefined global affairs. So it was not just Balkan event, just Eastern European event. The changes that happened in our region completely redefined global affairs. With the creation of the new political map of Europe and extension of NATO, small-sized countries became very important due to their geostrategic features, but also, and not less important, due to their cultural identity. So Kosovo has built a strong cultural identity through the millennium, making important part of European heritage. That's why Kosovo is also important not only for the region, but also for the whole of Europe. The story of history that I told through the maps from antiquity to the present time offers a different insight into the historical geography of Kosovo, but also speaks volume about continuity of cultural identity that is formed in the region of Kosovo. Now I will tell you very briefly about methodological approaches to map history study that I apply while I was working on the book. I started with the thesis that map is not just inert presentation of geographic reality. Mapping is a process of interpretation, what cartographer saw and what he decided to put on the map. So each map is absolutely subjective. It's never completely true, it's never completely accurate. But so mapping is interpretation of geographic reality. That is very important to understand. However, exactly because the map is always subjective, that is why it is so important. Because it reveals opinions and intentions. Because text is censored, but map is not. If you know how to read the map, you will reveal a lot of hidden things. That's why map is very powerful tool for historians. Which is also important that map reflects historical, political, and cultural context. So map is strongly socially conditioned, and it is conditioned by three major things. First of all, space and time in which the map appears. So historical context is always reflected in the map. So if you have a map of Kosovo from 14th century, you have to ask yourself what happened in Kosovo in the 14th century, because that the map reflects. So map is always strongly connected to historical content. The second thing which is important to ask yourself, who created the map? Not necessarily the name of the cartographer, but who does he represent? Which imperial politics stands behind that person? That is how you can really understand the purpose of the map. And the third factor is the audience for which the map is compiled, because it was always adjusted to the audience, and the purpose to which map was intended, because map was always a very strong message with a certain goal to achieve. So map is kind of a PR, literally, from the Middle Age until the present day. So map is a visual medium which is very powerful. Map have a power of 1,000 words, they say. So it's very powerful. So we can conclude that map is always a complex social construct. It's not objective, and map represents the power of knowledge. And it always advocates certain goals. That goals can be national issues, can be imperial politics. It can be also a local property rights. Everything is open for the maps, so you can advocate whatever you like with maps as a major tool. So we can have to have that kind of issues in mind when you read historic maps. And why historic maps of Kosovo are so important? What offers? What is on the table? Maps of Kosovo that shows Kosovo offers a different insight into the spatiality, into the historical geography of Kosovo. They reveal a different perspectives of identity. So especially pay attention to the language that is used on the map, especially when it comes to toponymy. Most of the maps are written or compiled by foreign cartographers. So they completely disrespect local place names. So that is an important issue. Maps are used in the context of political power, always. It's always politics behind the map. And of course, which is also very important to understand the maps, is knowledge circulation. Because knowledge doesn't circulate only through the space, but also through the time. The best example is the fact that you will find the markation of the place where Great Battle of Kosovo took place in the 19th century maps. So sometimes information travel from the far, but sometimes they travel from the past. Kosovo is developed at intersection of the Ottoman, Habsburg, and Serbian empires, and all of them produce maps. And that revealed how they saw the space. And they, of course, they saw it very differently. So they created very different visions of state power, historical memory, imperial and national borders, and sense of territoriality, which is also very different. So maps strongly influenced the European textual and visual imagery of Kosovo through history. So all those maps that are produced by Habsburg cartographers, by Venetian cartographers, actually shape the European perception of Kosovo. And now back to maps. So I will make a short intersection of the maps that I use in the book. The book contains 65 maps. I couldn't include them all, but I will give you some ideas what map means in a certain historical period of time. So I will start with antiquity, of course. Of course, Kosovo was very well known to Hellenic cartographers and geographers. One of them was Claudio Ptolemy, the most famous Hellenic cartographer, who produced map in the mid-2nd century AD. You can see that map here. Oh, it's in a video. Okay, I will use my mouse. So this is the origin. Of course, we don't have original for the 2nd century. This is the 13th century manuscript It's known as a Byzantine Codex, and this is the oldest preserved map that shows Kosovo as a Roman province, or better to say, within the Roman province Upper Moesia. So you can see these are the borders of Moesia, and this is the region where Kosovo is placed, or as a part of Dardania. So Ptolemy was very familiar with a certain number of urban centers in Dardania. That was Ulpianum, Vindenis, Velanis, and Aribantion. And he marked the borders of Upper Moesia. You can see Shar Mountain, you can see Prokletie. The western borders is somehow problematic because it looks like western part of Kosovo belonged to Dalmatia or Illyria, but we know for the fact that that wasn't true. But that's how Hellenic maps look like. So basically, Ptolemy wrote the book called Geography, and he included 27 maps of the Roman provinces. So Kosovo find his place within the map of the Upper Moesia. So that was the oldest map that I was able to find with Kosovo place names. Of course, during the 3rd and the 4th century, the most fashionable map within the Roman Empire were so-called tabula. These are the maps that shows the traffic network of Roman Empire. You know that the Roman army was an army that traveled by foot, so the road was very important. And I marked specially on this map the road that traversed Kosovo on the direction of Teranda, Vicianum, Vindenis. This is the road that is presented here. It's the major road that traversed Kosovo. Of course, there was many local roads, but Tabula Poitingeriana from the mid-4th century shows actually only this one, which was the main road that traversed through the Kosovo or ancient Dardania. So Kosovo was also well fitted in the network of the Roman roads, and we can follow that quite nicely. And it fits very well with archaeological research as well, so it is confirmed. What happened in the Middle Age? During the Middle Age, cartography declined, and the only type of map that was produced during the Middle Age are the world maps, so-called Imago Mundi. That means that the map is very congested and very generalized because it's a world map. And this is the section of one of the most famous world map. It was produced in the mid-12th century, where the Kosovo was part of Byzantine Empire, but also it was placed on the border with Serbia. The major urban center were forts Lipian and Ulpianum. And Kosovo is well presented on this map. The map was produced by Muhammad al-Idrisi. It was the Arab cartographer who worked in Cordoba. So the map was created in 1154. It is oriented to the south. So the Mecca and Medina were in the center of the map because it was under the Islam. And you can see very nicely that he was familiar with the region of Kosovo. So he decided to include one place name for Kosovo, and that is Ulpianum, as the most important place then in Kosovo. So he was familiar with the region, although it is the world map, but Kosovo is already there. But it became even more significant during the Middle Age. So what happened after the Great Battle of Kosovo? Great Battle of Kosovo was, of course, a great sensation in European chronicles, and that completely changed how Kosovo was perceived. Since the Great Battle of Kosovo, Kosovo is perceived as a battlefield. So this is one example of the manuscript map from the mid-15th century. This is the military map that shows military campaign of the Battle of Varna between Hungarian King Vladislav and Murad II, but which is interesting here is Kosovo included. And you can see Novo Brdo, which is particularly nicely shown as a large vedute. And this is one of the few settlements that has a special title. It says Novo Brdo, the most fortified town. So even then it was quite clear that Novo Brdo will be the fort that will decide who will rule the Kosovo, Serbian Despotate or Ottoman Empire. So that map practically appeared before the Battle of Novo Brdo, and you will see what will happen next. So this is the map, again one world map, again oriented to the north because of Idrisi influence. So this is the map that shows Kosovo after the Battle of Novo Brdo, because again it was one sensation. The map was compiled by Venetian mapmaker Fra Mauro in 1459, just after the Battle of Smederevo, which marked the end of Serbia. So it shows the Ottoman conquest. For Kosovo, there is now 3 place names. The first name, of course, is Novo Brdo as the major fort and a mining center. Then you have a Pristina here as a former capital of Brankovic, and of course you have Peć as a seat of patriarchy. There is no borders on that map, you will see. However, he was clearly aware of the Ottoman presence. Why? Take a look the size of the labels for the countries. For example, here is Bosnia, very small. Croatia, very small. Macedonia, very small label. Albania as well. But look at Bulgaria and Serbia. He put it a large labels for only those of 2 countries because that was actually the edge of the Ottoman Empire. So without drawing the line of the Ottoman conquest, he actually marked what is the reach of the Ottoman conquest. So that's why Bulgaria and Serbia appeared as a very large label on the map. So that marked the ultimate reach of the Ottomans. So you can see that after the Battle of Novo Brdo, Kosovo became more and more interesting to cartographer because Kosovo was seen as a battlefield and as an edge of the Ottoman Empire. So it is something very important. Of course, Kosovo under the Ottoman Empire was included in the system of Sanjak. It was divided on many different Sanjak along the history, but which is very important that only in the second half of the 17th century, in the time when the Habsburg army penetrated deeply into the Serbia, or better to say, into the Ottoman Empire, including Kosovo and Macedonia, only in that moment, in 1689, Kosovo completely captured the interest of all European cartographers. So Kosovo came into fore of all European cartographers. The specially interested party were church, but also a Habsburg military staff. So that's when many maps of Kosovo suddenly appear because of the Habsburg military campaign. This is one of the maps that appear exactly at the year of the Habsburg military campaign, and this is the first single map of the region. It shows the Serbian Empire, or Serbian Kingdom, better to say, but the Serbian Kingdom is under the Ottomans. However, currently it is under Habsburg control. However, this map actually shows the scope of the Catholic Church it was based on the trade and missionary accounts, mostly of the Franciscans from Albania. And nothing actually reveals that this part of the Ottoman Empire is under the Habsburg control, except with one small detail. Look at the cartouche here. There is a Habsburg eagle that sits on the cartouche. And that is the only trace that reveals the truth, that is actually under Habsburg control. But the map is interesting for other things. For the first time, it shows a human landscape of Kosovo in the time of the Habsburg military campaign. You can see the road by which Habsburg army arrived in Pristina, and then they continue to Skopje. But you can see for the first time many place names in Kosovo, and especially in the region of Dukajin. But as I said, this is a map created under the patronage of the Catholic Church, and this map also shows the ecclesiastic division of Kosovo. So this red line actually shows Archbishopric of Skopje and Prizren Episcopat. You can see Prizren is particularly well presented with the large cross as a seat of episcopat. So this is actually a church, because church was very interested for the situation with the Christians in the region of Kosovo. So they ordered the map of Kosovo. At the same time, another map appeared that shows Kosovo. This is the map that is focused on demographic changes that happened in Kosovo after the 1689. So domestic Christian population that supported Habsburg forces moved towards north, and demographic changes, especially in the urban areas, appear. So this map was concerned with the new discourse, the changes in the populations. So the share of Muslim population is growing. So the cartographer decided to add notes for each urban settlement, how many Christian and how many Muslim houses are in a certain urban area. So that was a new discourse that appeared on the map. And of course, military also showed great interest in Kosovo. So this is the first military map of Kosovo that appeared at the same year in 1689. So despite the Ottoman reconquest of the Kosovo, Habsburg army hoped to revert the situation. So they decided to collect geographical information about Kosovo even after they've been pushed back. So how this map was made based on the sketch or unknown military engineer. It means all conventions of military cartography, and it shows the route of military operations in eastern Kosovo. So you can see here, these are the roads used by Habsburg army. So, and you can see also very interesting thing, the Dukajin is missing because they didn't went there. They didn't go there. So they didn't have any information, and it was out of the reach of the Habsburg army. So basically they mapped only the eastern and central part of Kosovo. But this is the first military map of Kosovo. Of course, after each Habsburg Ottoman war, a new map appeared that shows the new situation of the new borders. But in the early 18th century, what was changed, besides the military maps that was only for the military eyes, maps that shows Habsburg Ottoman border appeared for a general audience. Of course, those maps didn't have any details because it was too sensitive. But this is one of the maps that shows the situation during the war before the Belgrade Peace Treaty. So you can see the position of the border. You can see the Serbia, of course, under the Habsburg rule, but also you can see this pink color. This is Kosovo under the Ottomans. So this is result of the commercial cartography that's still showing interest in the war theaters, but geographical information are very reduced because it was matter of the intelligence, it was top secret. So, but it is interesting, there is a clear reminiscence of the battle of Kosovo field. You can see here the title, Campus Merilinus Kasovius. So it was still very important to mark the place of the battlefield. Towards the end of the 18th century, the Habsburg military cartographers start to put more effort in mapping of Kosovo. So they send a secret cartographers. They send them to undercover mission to map all the lands under the Ottoman rules. So one of the cartographers, Franjo Mihanović from Croatia, in 1783, he traveled from Dures to Belgrade and traversed Kosovo from south to north, and he compiled this map. This is first conventional topographical map of Kosovo. It was strongly influenced by Josephinian topographical maps of the Habsburg monarchy, but it was done in hurry. So if you take a closer look, you will see this is the Kosovo field. It is completely wrongly oriented to the east-west direction. So he didn't have much time. So it was based on the undercover activities and intelligence. And of course, this map, which is very interesting, is accompanied by a military report. It's a huge text, which is full of foreigner impressions of Kosovo. It was full of distrust, biases. You can find all kinds of strange informations about Kosovo because he was afraid. He was afraid because he worked undercover. And he just waited to leave the region because he was afraid. But this is the first conventional topographic map of Kosovo. Of course, in the 19th century, particularly in the early 19th century, Europe started to show interest in Kosovo not only as a battlefield, but the Western discourse of the Ottoman culture became very important for the Western science. So there is number of travelogues and personal observations. There is a lot of travelers who travel along the European part of the Ottoman Empire. They produce diaries accompanied by maps. And this is completely different impression of Kosovo because this is personal observation of people and the land. Of course, there is also an echo of national consciousness that is growing in Albania and Kosovo in the 19th century. And there is a huge interest in languages and ethnography of Kosovo and Albania. And that is the eve of Albanology, not by chance. So this is the map that was produced by Johann Miller, one physician, Austrian physician, who traveled across the Kosovo and Albania. And he accompanied his book with this map that shows for the first time numerous villages in Dukajin based on the Ottoman sources. So somehow he got access to the defters, and he, as you can see, he noted so many small Albanian villages in Dukajin, and which is also very important, he noted all the names of Albanian communities. So you can find here Gashi, Hasi, Mirdita. Yeah. So it is kind of an ethnographic map as well. So that was the eve of Albanology. Of course, in the mid-19th century, there is another issue that became very important, especially for the Austrian authority, and that is the question of the rise of the local pashas and rebellions and uprising of Albanians against the Central Ottoman authority. Of course, Austrians wanted to support that. So they start to map a European part of the Ottoman Empire And that map, you can see, this map was published in Berlin in 1853 by Heinrich Kiepert, very famous German geographer. It shows Kosovo. This red line shows the territorial division on the Sanjaks, which was then Pristina and Prizren. However, and this red-yellow line is demarcation between the Serbia and Ottoman Empire. However, all these yellow lines are interesting because the yellow lines mark the regions of the Albanian population that like to uprising. So they've been aware of the lots of Albanian communities who want to rise against the Central Ottoman authorities. So they put all the names of the Albanians. So you can see all these yellows regions are the regions that are under the uprising. So you can see the names of Albanians that uprising. These are Mirditas, Dibra, Shala, Drishti, Gashi, Hasi, Pulati as a Roman Catholic diocese. So you can find a large number of Albanian communities first time on the maps because they started to uprise against the Ottoman community. So uprising became the main issue of the cartographers. And of course, after the Berlin Congress, mapping again became hugely important. However, as you all know, the Ottoman Empire didn't produce any maps of their own. What they used actually, these were Habsburg topographic maps. Their general staff translated Habsburg topographic maps on the Ottoman language. So when they fought the war, for example, they fought the wars with using the same maps. The Habsburg and the Ottomans used the same series of topographic maps to fight the war. So what happened in the eve of the Berlin Congress? Ottoman Empire was aware of the fact they don't have a proper topographic maps. So they engaged the Austrian general staff to conduct the triangulation of the whole Ottoman Empire, European part, and produce geodetic survey. So they produced professional topographic maps even for the region of the Ottoman Empire. That is one of the sheets you can see here. This map was published in 1878, but it was used during the negotiation in San Stefano and Berlin Congress. So they add new layers on the map. The first layer, it's here, this dotted line show the borders between Serbia and Ottoman Empire according to San Stefano, by which Peć and northwestern portion of Kosovo supposed to become part of Serbia. However, that didn't come true. So after the Berlin Congress, another border was drawn, and this is this purple line. Oops. This is purple line, and it shows the new borderline between Serbia and Ottoman Empire, by which the whole Kosovo stayed under the Ottoman rule. At the end of the 19th century, another genre of maps appear, and these are ethnographic maps. These are the most difficult maps, the most misleading maps that you can imagine, because it was, of course, all based on the statistics, but statistics was always manipulated. And I will show you 2 or 3 maps that are all based on the same statistic data, but they show completely different reality.
Same like of Johan's speech?
Yes, I will show something similar. So this is one of the this is Heinrich Kiepert map from 1876. It was based only on the language. So he completely disregarded the influence of religion in the Ottoman Empire, completely opposite to the Ottoman politics. He used only language to categorize the population. So as you can see here, Kosovo is here. So it is completely denoted as predominantly Albanian, but he disregarded influence of the religion, because there was Albanians who are not Muslim. There was also Christian Albanians, and there was also the Serbian population with a different denomination. So that map was highly criticized.
Very interesting, because they use Illyria for Albanian synonym.
Yes. Thank you for that. I forgot to mention that. Yes, the Illyrian name was used as a synonym for the Albanian. So you can see clear connection between Kosovo and Albania as a homogeneous region of the Albanians or Illyrian population. But that map was highly criticized because he disregarded influence of the religion. So the next year, another map appeared by Carl Sachs, Austrian scientist, who combined language and religion. So he got a more complex presentation of Albania and Kosovo here. It is still Albanian region, but it is very clear that there was Albanians of different religions. So there is Albanians who are Muslims, there are Albanians who are Christians, but there are also Serbian that are Islamized, and of course minorities are written first time in the brown. So there is also indication of the mixed areas, which is quite correct. And this is one of the most problematic ethnographic presentation of Kosovo. Of course, it was produced by Spiridion Gopčević, a Serbian nationalist, in 1889. So as you can see how he actually categorized population of Kosovo. So in ethnographic maps is all about categorization of population, based on which you categorized and how you call them. So how he categorized the population of Kosovo, they called them Albanians of Serbian origin, Islamized Serbs, and Serbian Christians, denying the existence of a long-established Albanian community at all. So there is no pure Albanians in the whole Kosovo. So you can see that almost everything is green, yellow. So that is another extreme. But Austrians were no better. They did the same manipulation with statistic data. This is the Austrian ethnographic map of the region of Kosovo. There is an important difference. You can see it's not anymore ethnicity, or now we're talking about nations, because that is not your nationality card. That is already different. However, the Kosovo in Austrian view was based, again, categorized solely on majority group. So minority were excluded, so there is no mixed area. So you can see the yellow color, which represent Albanians, gray and white represent Serbs, Orthodox and Islamist. And there is no mixed area, and of course, all the urban areas are marked as a Serbian region. So all ethnographic maps are full of biases. They are very, very manipulative. After the Balkan Wars, again, cartography of Kosovo of the Balkans in general became a very important issue in the whole of Europe. So there is a large number of printed maps for the general audience that appear in Europe that explain all the changes after the Balkan Wars. So this is one of the interesting maps that was published in Vienna just after the Second Balkan War. You can see they superimpose the old borders with the new borders to explain who get what, which territory is transferred to which country. So you can see clearly, of course, that all the Kosovo became part of the Serbia, and most western portion was transferred to Montenegro. So Kosovo was clearly divided. Of course, during the peace conference in Paris in 1919, unfortunately, Albania didn't have official representative, and Albania was dependent on the great powers. How the great powers will represent aspirations and wishes of Albanian people. In the other hand, Yugoslavia was fully represented with the full delegation and the peace conference, and they, of course, advocated the borders as they saw it. So this is one very interesting and rare map. It was ethnographic map by Nikola Lako. It shows, as you can see, ethnographic structure of the population of Albania and Kosovo, clearly marked as a compact Albanian region. However, that map was used by the most powerful delegate of the American delegation, Isaiah Bowman, and he used that map to show his idea how the Albania is supposed to look like, because Albania was still within the borders after the Balkan Wars. So this blue line is the borders of the Albania of 1913. And this dotted line is his idea to expand Albania on Dukagin and also on Dibra. So we know for the fact that that didn't come true, but that was actually American proposition, but it was strongly opposed by Cvic, who said, when they didn't have, that is very interesting, when they didn't have a good argument, they would say that Serbian population had a strong impact in a certain region. So that was the argument they used. So they said, no. Kosovo has to stay within Yugoslavia because the Serbian population had a strong impact on that region, and that part cannot become part of the Albania. It has to stay within Yugoslavia. That's how he argued his idea of Yugoslavia, or better to say, of Serbia. But American delegation tried to advocate otherwise. And that is the demarcation that happened. The demarcation was a very long process, demarcation between Albania and Kingdom of Yugoslavia. So this is the overview map. This is the new border that was demarcated between 1922 and 25, and demarcation was signed only in 1926. So it was the long process. So only Zuri, Žuri, and Vrbovica, west of Prizren, was actually transferred, Vernica, sorry, were transferred to Kosovo, but the rest of the demarcation was left as it was in 1913. What happened during the Middle War period? Of course, Kosovo became part of Yugoslavia, and Military Geographical Institute in Belgrade started to produce topographic map of whole of Yugoslavia, including Kosovo. And of course, topographic maps became tool of territorial appropriation. So you can see there is no respect to the local toponymy. The maps was compiled completely on Serbian language because it was central mapping from Belgrade. There is a lot of identity issues in those maps. The language is imposed. So place names are written in Serbian language. There is a lot of renaming of the settlements that are a result also of the planned colonization. So you can see everything is written in Serbian, and there is a lot of new place names. So Bardoš became Devet Jugovića, Obilić was written on Serbian language, Balšar became Miloševo, Škabaj became Orlović, all the historical figures from the Great Battle of Kosovo. So there was completely reinterpretation of Kosovo history through the topographic mapping. Of course, administrative division of Yugoslavia was also very unfriendly to Kosovo, because in each territorial division they tried to separate Kosovo on as many possible different territorial divisions, so they diminish Albanian majority, because there was also a Serbian population that was included in each of these units. So they always took a good care to disintegrate Albanian majority on a different territorial division, and that happened all along the interwar period. And what happened after 1945? Of course, Belgrade was still in charge for mapping, and which is interesting that early topographic map from Belgrade produced after the World War II included the borders of Kosovo and all republics. Those borders disappeared in the later edition, and this first edition of topographic map today is very hard to reach. However, a British Foreign Office as well as American Army did the reprint of those maps in 45 and 46. And thanks to that, we still have a topographic map that clearly shows where the borders between Kosovo, for example, and Montenegro was. And you can see here the detail. This is the sheet page. You can see clearly that Čakorit was within Kosovo as well as whole of region of Bjeluha. So you can still find those British and American topographic maps that are available that clearly speaks where the borders of Kosovo were placed in 1945. And there was many changes after, not only after 1945, but also after 1974, after the constitutional changes. This is one important map of Kosovo from 1965, because this is one of the earliest maps that are actually printed in Albanian language. That kind of school maps appear after the constitutional changes in 1963. So this is one of the earliest school maps in Albanian language. All school maps otherwise within Yugoslavia were prepared by Geokarta in Belgrade. So it was their vision, but in the later 60s, maps in other languages or re-edition of Geokarta in other languages, including Albanian, appears. So this is the edition by Relinja, and this is one of the oldest presses in Kosovo, who was also in charge for the school maps. And you can see still there, Žleb is still on the Kosovo side. Today it's not, but Čakorit is now on the Montenegro side. So that happened meanwhile. Ethnographic mapping, it's something that was not very popular in the time of Yugoslavia, so there is a very few ethnographic maps of Kosovo, but this one, published in 1992, was published in Zagreb. So it shows the last census of Kosovo population, very clearly defined as a homogeneous Albanian region. And I will end with this map, which is very important to say that after the Declaration of Independence, Republic of Kosovo start to produce their own maps. So you now have a full authorities under your territory, and you have a lots of locally produced map of Kosovo that highlights Kosovo's statehood, territorial sovereignty, and use of Albanian language. So finally, you have all the place names written as it should be, and of course those maps are very important for school, but also as a part of the nation-state building process, which is still going on, which is quite normal because you're a relatively young state. So those maps now circulate across the Europe, and as I said, Europe has to learn a lot about Kosovo still. I had similar presentation last summer in Paris, and they've been amazed and say, why we didn't know that? No one's told that to us. We didn't know about this destiny of Kosovo. Why didn't told us that what happened really? So Europe is really very interested in Kosovo. Europe is very interested in Kosovo heritage and cultural identity, which is very important part of European heritage. So you just have to fight for that and show them what you have. Thank you very much.